I was told in PT school that, Charlie, you might not be cut out for this profession. Of course, I could get into all that stuff, but anyway, the coaches of that New Jersey Shortcast team was one of the greatest to ever play, Rick Barry, and Clifford Ray, who I just saw the other day in Atlanta Airport. He lives in Orlando now. I still message with him. I message Rick every so often. A few years before, Clifford Ray was part of the New Jersey Nets staff, where Coach Butch Beard had him as one of the assistants. So when I graduated PT school in '99, I said to Clifford, hey, I kind of like this basketball thing. When you were with Coach Butch, maybe it's the same athletic trainer. Do you think that you could help me see if I can stick around in this game? And he said, yep. His name was Ted Arzonico. He said, give him a call. So this then now moved into the fall, and I messaged him on a Thursday. I interviewed on a Friday, and I was in the NBA on Sunday. All because of this random thing where the first place that I went to didn't give me the time of day, picked a different place, and then a few years later, I go from becoming an unpaid intern, with college credit, to $10 an hour, to having like a steady job whenever I needed it, and all of a sudden that turns into the New Jersey Shortcats, and then that turns into getting to the New Jersey Nets with Ted Arzonico. Head coach was Don Casey. Assistants were Michael Corrin. I don't hear from him too much anymore. Eddie Jordan, is somebody that unbelievable impact on how he made me feel part of everything. Who was Jimmy Lynam, who then, of course, was also an assistant when I was in Philly. It's when you work in pro sports, I think the names and the stories are always very easy to circulate. So that was '99, 2000, and it was all this randomness of where hard work and opportunity intersect. So there it was. Pretty sure I was 22 years old and in the NBA, not full time, but then as that season went on, that was the '99-2000 season, I'm in the USBL again for a third year, and I get a phone call, because just so you know, when you're the head athletic trainer in minor league basketball, you're the athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach, equipment manager, team mother, van driver, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm driving the van over the Outer Bridge Crossing, which is one of the bridges from New Jersey into New York. It takes you to Staten Island, and then you go through and you get to Brooklyn. We were playing Brooklyn, and I remember this because I get a phone call from Ian Rubel. Ian Rubel was one of the ops guys, and he was a good friend at that time. Haven't heard from him in many years. He said, we fired Teddy and John Nash would like to know if you can be here tomorrow. And I don't know how I didn't drive off of the Outer Bridge Crossing. So I said yes, and I'll just deal with it. I told all the players, I didn't really know what it was going to be, if I was going to not be with the team in the USBL anymore, because this was around draft time. And I also had to cancel a patient, the next day, which was somewhat unprofessional of me, meaning it was unprofessional, and I live with those consequences. That was a business decision that I had to make at the age of 23. And that was my office. I picked up Teddy's phone, and I handled the draft, and that was the year the Nets drafted Kenyon Martin. So that did not continue, because if people remember basketball history, that's when Rod Thorne came in. And I was working for Rod Thorne, but as the summer went on, he brought in his own trainer. I do remember John telling me I'd have a chance to interview for the assistant job, and unfortunately that never happened. Welcome to pro sports. But now I have legitimate NBA experience. And remember now, I'm not there if all those things that we talked about in the other video don't happen. But I was in the minor leagues, so that next year, ironically, it turned into something also in New Jersey. Call it AAA. Many people from that era would remember the CBA, which, along with the IBL and a different version of the ABA, is what the modern day version of the G League. My coach in the IBL for the Trenton Shooting Stars was NBA superstar Jeff Malone. Jeff Malone when Michael Jordan would say Jeff Malone was the toughest player to defend. So we did it. We all, when you're the head trainer, obviously you're very close to. It's a very startup type environment where lots of people are always in close quarters. And then the next year was when the D League, which is now known as the G League, started. Jeff was picked as one of the coach. A number of things happened that I went to Columbus, Georgia with Jeff Malone, and 2 years there, and you kind of keep your ear to the pavement. Which is really how you get jobs in pro sports. When you have to know when these things are up. Applying for jobs on teamwork, like you see nowadays, is just a compliance issue that a lot of teams will use. But I found out that there was opportunity in Philadelphia, and never thought I would get a response. I don't know, where that interview was really actually for. I was kind of led to believe that it was for a head trainer position, but I didn't care because even though I was able to get the assistant trainer job, moved to Philly, and in Philly, at that point, I was just game day assistant athletic trainer for that first year, which would have been 2003. And then based on how I think the reason was based on how I looked, which at that time I was at the relative, not peak, but really at a high level of my powerlifting career. I looked like I knew how to handle weights, which of course has nothing to do with how do you develop athletes. But the guys would say, hey, Chuckwagon, come put me through one, because I looked like I knew how to handle some barbells and dumbbells. Because also, which maybe sounds strange, even in 2003, we did not have a strength and conditioning coach. There was some cockamamie, fly-by-night, arrangement, where sometimes, very poorly trained coaches would come in and have the guys do speed ladder, and there was a facility that had an overspeed treadmill, all ridiculous stuff, and then I became the head strength coach in Philly. So I think that was how I looked. But then that summer was when I took whatever money that the Sixers had for me, and whatever money I wanted to spend. And ironically, as we filmed this at Perform Better Functional Training Summit, it's the first time I saw Mike Boyle, first time I saw Mark Verstegen, first time I saw Stuart McGill, and now I'm up on the big room, just like them. So I really refocused what I thought I knew as a physical therapist and a certified athletic trainer, and now needed to at least find what I thought at that time and moment was what was the most up-to-date, best-in-class strength and conditioning approaches. And because I did choose those things, you could argue if that was best-in-class at that time or not, but that's what I chose. And the parallels and links to what I was doing as a physical therapist really started to make a lot of sense to me. And there was a number of other influences like Yonda, like Sarman, obviously using the FMS at that time. Things just all started to make sense, but it was always about training to me. And even when I was going to PT school, I would have said the only reason I'm going to PT school is so I can become a more marketable certified athletic trainer. And at that point, as I started to get the repetitions in Philly as a strength coach, to me it was always about training, but you could use some of these methods that might be of utility for someone who's hurt, injured, in pain. You also could tap into those same adaptations for performance. And whether it's true or not, I don't have any championship belt, but I do at times find people crediting me with inventing performance physical therapy. I don't believe that to be true. I believe Charlie Francis is responsible for that, especially when he brought in the marks to start to do some really high-level stuff with the sprinters that he was doing. So I do believe that the next step is really where I do deserve some credit. After I moved on from Philly, I worked for a hospital near where I grew up, not Toms River, a couple towns up in the next county, where I had satellite facilities, or even when I was in the hospital area for physical therapy, I had my own little space, and that's where I somewhat invented, when you walked into a physical therapy office, are you in the right place, because it looked like a gym. And that was very desirable for the hospital because it promoted their orthopedics and made them feel that they had something special. But the hospital was able to charge enormous amounts of money. I remember at one time a patient showed me the bill, and he goes, "Charlie, I love what you're doing, but you get paid more." And I know he knew I didn't get the money, but you get paid more than a Wall Street attorney, per hour for what he was doing, which was, at that time probably what somebody else might call athletic development. I'd call it injury prevention, because if you're in that scenario as a physical therapist, training is rehab. And that's really not where the idea started. They all started in Philly, but then when they really started to get into practice, where I was working well over 40 hours a week and really digging in and demonstrating these things, because now when the word got out that you could use your insurance for athletic development as well as physical therapy, and if you had really good insurance, like in an upper middle class area would, all of a sudden I didn't have the issues that you got discharged after ACL. You saw the kids for 8, 9, 10 months after ACL, shoulders, et cetera, et cetera. It was a utopic environment, even though it was somewhat in the real world. But obviously anytime, and for people that probably know me, working in a corporate environment, working for a hospital, I was happy and it was awesome and I had unlimited continuing education, but at some point you do need to grow, and my head was on the ceiling. It wasn't going to happen. So I started to say to myself, okay, the next really cool job, whether it was the MBA, even though that was a little bit out of my system as far as something I felt like I needed to do, it didn't define me anymore. But that's where the Marine Corps opportunity came up, where I'm pretty sure I got the message that between like 12:01 and 12:15 a.m. was when I had to get the application in on Indeed.com or whatever it was. Same shit, different day. That's how this stuff works. And I wound up going down there with a gentleman who I was so excited to work with. And that situation didn't go so great for a number of reasons. But as every year goes on, it becomes a more positive learning experience. So to this day, a Master Sergeant did the first toast at my wedding. I hear from many individuals, and I've been able to consult with multiple other special operations branches in our country as well as others. So couldn't have been all that bad. But yeah, that was a rough time in Carolina. And really, without getting too much into it, sometimes people think they want something, but they don't really want something. In this case, they did not want this program. They did not want a civilian to be, they didn't want to trust these individuals. I remember the commander told me once that, "Charlie, your problem is you look like us, you sound like us, you talk like us, but you're not one of us." And I'm like, why did you bring me here? And I didn't say that to the commander. I more respect than that. But ultimately, that was the question. Like, why did you bring me here if you didn't really want to do any of this? You just want somebody to, yell and scream and during stupid types of CrossFit type idiot training methods. But that's when then, maybe the story somewhat culminates to a degree when I came home, and that's where actually when I was in New Jersey building those, kind of sports performance, sports therapy, physical therapy offices, I had a young man who I would mentor, and his name was Anthony Connors. And without Anthony Connors having the confidence to come talk to me, then when I come home from the Marine Corps, Anthony Connors doesn't suggest that I should go work at this gym in the city called Drive 495. And that's where I met Don Saladino, who, as many people know, was the officiant, fake, farcical officiant at my wedding. And Anthony Connors deserves full credit for this relationship, because if he doesn't come to me, and then he doesn't want me to come to the city, and he wanted me to come to the city for a while, and it just wasn't the right thing for me. So that's where I came to the city, and I remember Don said that, well, paraphrasing, if I'm the man around here and I charge $300, then you're going to start charging $300 an hour, because then you're going to be the man. And my credit and debt to him just for that statement is put this on a skyrocket. Where I remember the first day that I worked at Drive, I saw a young lady, and the next lady was also blonde, and her name was Scarlett Johansson. So everything from there kind of really took off. I think that's where the social media stuff started to really work. That's where the first T-Eagles are. I was able to have this solopreneur approach. and anything after that is probably more modern day and not much of the luck piece, because now it's just development and taking opportunities, always remembering when you say yes to one thing, you say no to another. Obviously Nike came along, and that's an enormous chip for me, because that's where I got exposure to even more professional athletes, for what I think a lot of people think I only do, but really a lot of a significant part of my working year is I'm the player's guy, where I have a number of top guys that kind of keep me on retainer, and my job is to make sure that they play as many games as possible and they can make as much money as possible for their family, and they move away from the game when they decide, not somebody else. I don't have that access to these types of individuals without those years at Nike that Keith D'Amelio brought me into. So I'm big on naming names, because it's clear that I would not be doing this video, and anyone would be interested in listening, without a lot of people that I probably haven't named. So that's the story. Obviously, it all goes back to the other video where we talked about, there's a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's a very famous book, but I don't know if it's famous anymore, because I don't really have this track of time. Probably 20 plus years old. I'm not an outlier like the people in those books, but everybody has an outlier story where you're just in the right place at the right time, and if that ball does kind of land in your hands, you didn't catch it, it lands in your hands, but then you're going to run after the catch and you score a touchdown. Things like that is, I know Chris Poirier, another major person that put me on stage to create a lot of these things for me. He gets mad when I say I'm lucky, because I think it's all luck. I say, all right, fine, but maybe I hit a double off the wall, but still somebody had to let me pitch it.